and I was joking with Seth, and I expect you to be able to speak eloquently on the role that the Magna Carta has played in the establishment of constitutional republics like the United States.
I will surely disappoint you.
Oh, really? Your English heritage. Your parents should have told you a lot about Magna Carta.
I've heard the word.
Yeah. Probably couldn't even tell me.
They didn't take the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like a document.
It is a document. Magna Carta. I want to be on the record. That's a document. These statements that add nothing to the discussion.
An important one at that.
When I think about
really gives document vibes.
I think about the Magna Carta as a document.
It's giving paper.
That really made an impact. Oh my goodness. Welcome to the Sex Life Science Podcast, where we talk about everything in life from sex to science. I'm Dr. Justin Gregory Briggs, LMFT, and I have a Ph.D. in Human Development and Family Studies from Purdue University and a Master of Science in Marriage and Family Therapy from Northwestern University. My co-hosts today are psychotherapists and marriage and family therapists Kate Baugher and Seth Frank. Today's episode is on history and how people remember and narrate both their personal pasts and collective human history plays an important role in determining their life and relationship satisfaction. This podcast is intended for adult audiences and may discuss sensitive topics that are not suitable for all listeners. The content of this podcast is meant for educational and entertainment purposes only. We aim to help you make informed decisions based on evidence-based practices, sound theory, and research. However, remember that science is continually evolving and individual experiences can vary widely. In any discussions of our clinical work, we maintain strict confidentiality and ethics, using only altered or hypothetical case examples. Listening to this podcast is not a substitute for medical, mental health, or relationship care. We encourage you to consult with a qualified professional for personalized treatment. What comes to mind when you think about history? And I'm going to try not to get too excited. I was a history major as an undergrad. I love history. I described it years later to my history professors. They're like, oh, you went into psychology. I'm like, yeah, I've always liked people. History is a story of people. Now I'm just into people in the present and their history. And they're like, yeah, it makes sense. So I love history. But what comes to mind when you think about history?
Think about that fad recently that went on where all men are supposed to think about the Roman Empire.
Yes. Like how many times did you think about the Roman Empire today? My sister-in-law got me on that. She's like, how many times? I can't remember, was it in the day or in the week?
I don't know.
During the day.
Okay. She was like, Justin, out of nowhere. I didn't know the trend was a thing. She's like, how many times a day do you think about the Roman Empire? And I was like, 6 to 10. And she just started laughing like crazy. Yeah, it's not. What's
the deal?
I fit the stereotype.
You do.
I see any money and I see the Latin and I think the Romans spoke Latin. There's just so many things that are like 1 degree of separation or right on. I just love history. So I am reading it quite a bit. 6 to 10 times. I'm going to stand by that. Yeah.
I don't even think I've thought about the Roman Empire 6 to 10 times in my life.
And now you're on the history episode of the Sex Life Science Podcast.
Oh, yeah.
It's daily. Yeah, you're way behind me. Way behind me.
What about you, Seth?
Or ahead of me, depending on how you want to look at that.
I do not fit the stereotype. I don't think about the Roman Empire that often. I mean, every so often I will, but not not daily, certainly.
I mean, not to get too pious.
Weekly?
Not to get too pious. So like as a Christian, when I am reading the Bible, the Roman Empire comes up quite a bit in there.
Yeah.
So I am thinking about that.
Yeah, but it's only tertiary.
Yeah. It's not. Yeah. But again, I'll stand by it 6 to 10 times.
I think about the history of our field.
You dork.
Of psychotherapy.
Yeah.
And how far we've come. I mean, it wasn't that much long ago that they were performing lobotomies.
Yes. Not a highlight of psychotherapy and psychiatry. Lobotomies, the really harsh, insane asylums.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've come a long way since those days, thankfully.
Yeah.
Thankfully. Yeah. We have some dark moments, but in our defense, we are talking about the most complex living organism on planet Earth, human beings. And specifically, when we're talking about the brain, we're talking about the most complex part of the most complex organism known in the universe. So we're not going to hit the ball out of the park every time. But yeah, we've come a long way in our history. I recently read an article on psychodynamic theory, which a lot of people know as psychoanalysis. You think about Freud, and a lot of people think that that's still psychoanalysis, is whatever Freud wrote. Well, he's a part of the history. There's been a lot of evolution in psychoanalysis. Very little talk of id, ego, and superego going on in any psychodynamic theory today. So yes, if you think we haven't progressed since Freud and lobotomies, which, looking back on that one, like, let's remove the whole front part of your brain. That's a rough intervention.
Who needs that?
No. The answer to that is nobody needed that. That was not a good move. Did not work out well.
To switch gears a little bit, I've been thinking about the World Cup.
Yeah.
In almost every match, it seems like the commentators saying something about, this historical thing.
Yes. And they won in 1964. Yeah. I mean,
and so there's this,
sports are
the
great
World Cup is this shared international community historical movement.
Today, we are talking about history in 3 parts. We're talking about our personal history. Sometimes you'll hear this called family of origin work or relationship history work. We are going to talk about family and intergenerational history. So this is beyond just what happened in our nuclear family, but what are the generational cycles, the generational stories shared in families. We're also going to talk about human and cultural history and the role that our understanding of that plays on things like life satisfaction and relationship satisfaction. So that's what we're talking about today when we talk about history. And what is history? History is really a story. When you look at the roots of the word history, it means story. Narrative identity is the internal life story that people use to create meaning and purpose. So my question, when does history become identity?
History becomes identity when it is given weight and repeated. It is that portion that is repeated over and over and over. So I can tell you facts about when I was born. I can tell you time and date and those kind of things, but I don't really put a lot of weight on those.
That's not really identity for you.
No, that's not my identity. But I can point to specific stories in middle school and high school and college and in my career that say, that's who I am. And if you really want to know me, I tell those stories to tell you and introduce you to who I am.
That's actually interesting that you say that because I love history. I majored in history as an undergrad, studied history, read history my whole life. It's still one of my primary hobbies is listening to history podcasts and reading history. You talked about how the date of your birth and the location of your birth, it's really not part of your identity. And the stereotype for people who probably had bad history teachers, in my opinion, is like, I don't really like the dates and your location stuff. And I'm like, me neither. And I've always sucked at it. Like I was not great at that type of history test, but it's the stories. It's the stories that are repeated and it's the meaning of the events. And did this happen on this day or this day is not nearly as important historically as like, what is the thing that happened and what was the context of the time and what was the impact of this event or this series of events. That was always fascinating to me. And that's what you say is really the foundation of what becomes our identity. What are the stories that are repeated? What are the stories' implications, understanding those?
History becomes identity when we look at the meaning made from the experiences had. So what did this experience that I went through say about me? What did I learn about myself? What did I learn about how I react in these situations? It gives us information that our brain is observing and taking in, and it's how we make meaning out of the different events.
Is there a difference between remembering meaningfully and remembering accurately?
Yes.
I reluctantly say yes.
Okay.
Yes. When you say that, I think of an instance of, let's just say 2 people are on a plane and it crashes. Traumatic event. 2 people experiencing the same traumatic event, but they can have 2 very different experiences. One person, let's say everybody survives. To stay positive.
To keep it
light.
Yeah. There was a plane that crashed. Everybody survived.
Everyone's fine, but everyone's traumatized. So
a lighthearted, dark example.
Yeah. Just something light.
Yeah.
So we interview these two people. One person says, "Oh my gosh, it was horrifying. I can't believe this happened to me. Like, I was a victim of this trauma and I don't know how I'm going to move on." And they start having more of like a negative perspective on the experience.
The meaning they're giving it.
The meaning they're giving it is more of a negative one. Whereas somebody else could say, "Oh my gosh, we survived this. Like, I'm so grateful for life. I helped these people once we got on the ground." And same experience, different meanings associated. And that's where that accurately remembering, like both people can recall the event, yes, but remembering meaningfully is going to ultimately determine how they're going to recover from this traumatic event.
And with that example, both parties remembered it meaningfully, but the meaning one party took was, now I'm never safe. I am traumatized and will remain so indefinitely. And the other person took the survivor's mentality. Yeah. I think of a pop cultural example. Do you guys remember the movie The Notebook?
Oh, I love that movie.
Okay, I thought I would get at least one fan of that movie. Get ready to be a little jealous. I got to see a Screen Actors Guild screening of that, not because I was a part of the Screen Actors Guild. I was considered a friend of the Screen Actors Guild.
Plus one, if you will.
Screen Actors Guild adjacent over here. And Jenna Rollins and James Garner were there, and I got to meet them and talk with them. But there's a scene in that movie where they play the older versions of the same characters played by Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams. And there's this scene where, spoiler alert, it is a 20 to 25-year-old film at this point, so it's on you if you haven't seen it. But early in life, teenage years, the Rachel McAdams character, the Jenna Rollins character, falls in love with the Ryan Gosling, James Garner character. Beautiful story, but they get separated. And they get reunited later, and there's pain there. There's hurt. She's now in another relationship. And she has this moment where she's like, "Why didn't you reach out to me?" And he says, "I wrote you a letter every day for a year." And it was her mother. Oh, keeping those letters from her, jerk, right?
Yeah.
But she took a meaning from history that wasn't an accurate telling of that history. For her, she believed something to be true that wasn't true. And it led her to draw some pretty harsh conclusions about what James Garner, Ryan Gosling's character, felt about the relationship. So we could remember something meaningfully, and it's not necessarily that the meaning comes from it being accurate. It's what is the story. And for her, it was, this guy didn't really care about me. If he cared about me, he would have reached out to me. Little did she know, 365 letters went her way, and darn mom kept them from her.
Yep.
There's a part of me who really values technically correct. You've ever heard the Futurama quote, "Technically correct is the very best kind of correct"? I'm like, yes, that's right.
that is you. I like that about you.
And so having an accurate memory, and The Notebook is a great example, because the accuracy actually does help understand and give new context and give a different weight to actually what happened. Sometimes in our lives, we need that accurate thing that reminds us, oh, wait, I may have misread this, and have that humility, that willingness to express, oh, I might have gotten this wrong. I think that is always very helpful. But that reality is we have a meaning that we have attached, and that meaning and how much weight it has can really influence how we proceed with our lives and what conclusions we draw.
Yeah. And that story we tell ourselves about our history is so powerful.
Yeah.
Whether the history is accurately told or inaccurately told. And it could go both ways. We talked about an example with The Notebook where she drafted a meaning based on an inaccurate telling of history, and it was very damaging. If you're not being honest about the severity of something that you went through, that isn't a great meaning either, because maybe you're not going to be as vigilant. Maybe you're not going to be as aware think about the reality, we know that trauma survivors are more likely to be re-traumatized again. In part, and I want to be very clear when I say this, the trauma survivor is 0% responsible for the abuse inflicted upon them. Okay?
Yeah.
0. The perpetrator is 100% responsible for that abuse. What we talk about with trauma survivors is avoiding high-risk situations. Somebody can be responsible for putting oneself in a high-risk situation while remaining 0% responsible for what was done to them. And sometimes we think about like a dating history or a family history. You don't call a red flag a red flag. Well, if it's not a red flag, I don't really need to categorize it as such, and you're not going to notice it in the next relationship.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if you would have told yourself a more accurate telling of history, that was a red flag. That person ended up hurting me in this particular way. I'm going to pay attention to that in the future. And if you couple that with a narrative of redemption and resilience, like we know that redemption narratives are linked with things like well-being and good mental health. It's the difference between being traumatized and being a trauma survivor. The latter, there's a built-in redemptive story there. You survived. There's a lot of power in the story. Contamination or victim narratives are not linked with well-being or good mental health. If you're now fatally flawed because your parents were abusive to you or you were abused in some way by somebody, you're broken, full stop. That's particularly damning. So the meaning we take from our history matters.
One of the areas I see that idea of an accurate telling of the story come up is with some kind of familial bond, either a parent or a sibling or something like that, where the person keeps trying to take that leap of faith of trusting them again. When the person has broken that trust over and over and over, and they start to internalize that narrative of it must be me. Something's wrong with me. Why they keep breaking my trust. Well, no, that person has just been untrustworthy.
They are 100% responsible for their decisions.
Yeah. But because it has been inaccurate, it is my responsibility as to why they've broken their trust, not their responsibility for breaking the trust.
Yeah, that would be a damning meaning to take away from that history.
If I told that story accurately, I could say, this person is untrustworthy. I still care about them. They're still my family member. They're still the person. I still love them. But I'm going to change how I relate to them to protect myself from untrustworthiness.
I'm not going to put myself in a situation that relies them to be trustworthy in this area where they have repeatedly let me down.
Exactly. Eventually they may grow into that trustworthy, but
until they've earned it though. And we have a whole episode on trust. Go check it out. That's a great point there.
Yeah. So with that example, Seth, I hear you say that the most helpful personal history narratives are going to be those that acknowledge the joys and sorrows, successes and failures, really ensuring that they're honest and accurate retellings of the past.
Yeah. So this person could be somebody who really violated my trust, really good in all of these other ways in these other contexts.
Yeah.
I maybe was a little naive by trying time and time again to trust them in this context where they have just proven to not be reliable. You know, this is a family member who's never paying you back. Despite, they keep saying they're going to pay you back. So you keep giving them $100 here and $100 there, and it just never gets paid back, right?
Cousin Eddie on Christmas vacation.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, that's a donation. That's not borrowing. That's a donation. So you could call a spade and still love Cousin Eddie and still want him over for Christmas vacation and appreciate all that there is to appreciate without saying, and he's totally reliable and will pay you back. No, he won't. Yeah. We want the tellings of history to be as accurate as they can be and know we have the power of authoring some of the meaning that we give it. This is true of family narratives too. There's a relationship between family history and personal well-being. I want to be clear. I'm not saying you have to know certain things about your family history in order to be a well-adjusted or maladjusted person. So this is talking about giving life a richness or learning as opposed to being like an essential ingredient. But let's just say that you don't know anything about your family history. The meaning you give to that will matter. I've had clients over the years who are adopted, and we talk about the family history they have with their adopted family. And sometimes they know a lot about their biological parents. Sometimes they know nothing about their biological parents. And the meanings I've seen given to that vary greatly. Some are really helpful. Some are not. There's the, they didn't want me. There's the, I was chosen. There's the, they hated me, didn't want anything to do with me. They loved me so much, they gave me to somebody who they believed would take the best care of me. I'm not saying there has to be a given amount of history that you understand, but your family history, what do we know about that? What meaning are we given to that?
One of the things we did in my master's program for marriage and family therapy was something we call a genogram.
Fancy family tree.
Yeah, fancy family tree is a great way of describing it. There are boxes and symbols and lines that connect relationships and describe how relationships between family members played out.
Yeah, and you're even identifying things like addiction in some family members.
Absolutely.
Or cutoffs or traumas.
Divorce, separation, all those things.
Very
can be
detailed family tree.
And one of the stories, I hadn't put it in this way before the genogram, but putting it in the genogram really showed me that my grandfather, he was a World War II veteran. I think he probably suffered from PTSD after the fact and was never diagnosed.
It didn't even exist back then as a diagnosis. Yeah.
Also had an addiction history that made my mom's life really hard when she was growing up. But for me, he was the quintessential grandfather.
Yeah.
He was the perfect grandfather.
Wow.
And part of that was the story. Yeah. This story that my family tells of when I was 5, I told him, I'm not going to play with you anymore if you keep drinking.
Do you even remember saying that?
I don't remember it. I just have heard this story over and over in my life. From that day on, he never touched another drop of alcohol.
Wow.
And my entire experience with him was that gentle, wonderful, great grandfather that you might hear of in stories.
Yeah.
My mom had an addiction history, and she got help and support and got better. And it didn't ruin her life.
Yeah.
It didn't have a huge impact beyond those couple of years. And I've found my own times where I needed redemption. And so there's this story that I can go back at least 5 generations in my family of this thing has gone on, this hard experience. And because family support, because community support were involved, redemption occurred for each of these people. And they got to live out a really great and wonderful life. And that story is part of what informs me as a therapist as well, that I believe there is a chance of change for anyone. I believe that there are these opportunities that redemption can happen. It takes a lot, though.
Yeah.
I'm not guaranteeing it. I just trust that it can be, and that informs me as a clinician.
Part of what might be informing that, the heaviness of that intergenerational trauma, is a bit of misinformation that has existed out there. You may have heard that intergenerational trauma effects are transmitted through families.
Right.
And some people have even said it's like biologically etched into your DNA. We have a technical term for that. We call it horse shit. Okay. That's not true. Okay. We could certainly see cycles that happen in families, but it's not so simplistic that if great grandma was in World War II hellscapes, that now you're carrying evidence of that in your DNA. That is not true.
And not what I'm suggesting.
And that's not what he's saying at all. What Seth is describing is an experience that I had my version of when I was in my master's program. And a lot of marriage and family therapists will have a similar assignment. Kate, you may have had the genogram assignment. Yeah, right. We all had it. I had a couple things. One, I learned things about my family. I saw these patterns that existed. And then we were sharing our genograms. And I realized a lot of the things I was saying about my family history that I thought were unique were shared. Family history as reason for isolation is a common meaning that comes into our therapy rooms. And I just let people know most of us barely get to first cousin if we're lucky in our family before you have serious mental health or addiction or abuse issues. A lot of times it's in your immediate family, if not their grandparents, but first cousin. I mean, the percentage of people who can make it past grandparents, aunts and uncles, and first cousins without having addiction, major mental health, or abuse and trauma, they are the minority. So two things are true. Those are big issues and pain points. They're also common to literally every family tree that exists on planet Earth, including all those super well-adjusted, high-functioning people. Yep. It's in their family tree too. That should be encouraging. We are not subject to our family history. The fact that your grandmother, or Seth, your grandfather, dealt with horrors of World War II is not now etched in your DNA to where you're now subject to that and you're just destined to have these maladaptive trauma responses or whatever it might be. There could be a story of resilience there. There's learning to cope through these events and never think about them? How much do I want to think about our family history, our personal histories?
A healthy amount.
Nice and specific. Like, what does that look like? Can we think about it too much?
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely.
Can we think about it too little?
Yes.
Yeah. I always like to give this visual example of when you're driving a car, you have to keep your eyes on the road, looking forward in the direction you're heading. But we do have a rear view mirror for a reason. It's helpful to glance back for reference. Okay, how far is the car behind me? Are they going to rear end me? Whatever the case may be. It's important to glance into the past. It is there for a reason to inform us on how to be better drivers moving forward. But ultimately, if we stare into the rear view mirror, we're going to crash the car.
Yeah. We need to think about the past enough to honor it and learn from it, but not so much that we're going to get stuck there. I tell clients, there are certain trains of thought that if you hop on that, you're guaranteeing to reach a destination where you're not feeling great. You stay too long in your trauma history. Again, I'm not saying none. Let's learn from it. Let's grow. Let's grieve it. Let's honor it. And let's hop on another train. I feel this way too, more broadly about human history. There's a process in mental health called punctuation, and we see this in couple therapy. Punctuation is the process where we make a complex circular causality situation into a linear causality. So if somebody will say A caused B, and their spouse is saying, no, B caused A. And the reality is there's a cycle of A causing B, causing A, causing B, causing A, causing B. The reason why I don't want to have sex is because I'm not feeling psychologically and emotionally close to you. Well, the reason I'm not feeling psychologically and emotionally close to you is because we're not having sex. And now you see what punctuation does, is it breaks up this more complex cycle and makes it linear. And that's to make sense of the complex, and our brain will have a lot of shortcuts there. The problem is it's not accurate. When I look at human history, like I look at a lot of cultural narratives, it becomes really easy to villainize literally any people group if you punctuate history at a certain point. And the truth is, we all descend from heroes and villains. None of us has a pure bloodline here. All of us descend from slaveholders and slave. That is statistically true. There is no way we're talking about a human history that goes back 250 to 350,000 years, and none of us descends from both heroes and villains. So things I think about in human history that are problematic ways. Men worked while women stayed at home. That might have been true for some families, predominantly in the 1950s, predominantly in the United States. But what do we know about most history? Men and women were both working their asses off. People in the past had the same sexual identities and categories we use today. Nope, not true. Sexual ethics have evolved in various regions throughout the world at various times in very different ways. A historical group was either entirely oppressed or entirely powerful. We have written human history until some of the earliest examples, a few thousand years BC. I just said that we've been around for 250,000 years. Most people groups are lost to history. And pretty much every people group that we know of was at once an oppressor or a member of the oppressed. We all descend from heroes and villains. We all descend from oppressor and oppressed. One event explains why a group behaves as it does today. We hear that not just about human history, but our clients will say that. The reason I'm this way is because my mom was that way. What do we know about? We call those univariate explanations of human phenomena. What do we know about those?
It isn't true.
Yeah.
History and people are more complex.
Yeah. It almost always takes many factors to predict a given outcome. So what do you guys think about the relationship between what we know or what we're telling ourselves about human history and mental health and relationships?
It's hard because to be accurate, it's impossible to know all the history.
And maybe that needs to be part of it then.
Yeah.
You have a little humility.
Yeah. There's so much complexity here that at some point we need to generalize and simplify.
Yeah. Part of that's unavoidable, just to even have conversations about things. Yeah.
And so we do that by telling the stories. And we tell the stories that have the most impact and the most meaning. And when we tell those over and over, they become and shape our reality. But being able to go back and take a moment and have that humility to question, are we telling the right story here?
Yeah.
Am I telling the right story? Am I connected to this history of the right stories that is actually going to lead me to a helpful outcome and a healthy life? Or am I telling one that is going to suppress the opportunities that might otherwise come up in my life?
Dominic Sandbrook is one of the hosts of The Rest is History. I mentioned that podcast earlier. And he talks about a counterpoint to the point, like, know your history, because like know a little thing about history because it'll help you break up the cycles of the past. And he said, sometimes if you know a little bit about history, it'll build resentment and make you really want to like take action in our rights. Have some humility. We all descend from heroes and villains. We all descend from oppressor and oppressed. I would add, culturally, we probably have more in common with our enemies today than our direct ancestors from 1,000 years ago. Hopefully that gets us off any high horse that we're tempted to sit on.
As a marriage and family therapist, we conceptualize cases systemically. That is very helpful when we're understanding what makes people do the things they do. Why do they behave the way they behave? It's that they're being influenced by all of these systems simultaneously, and they're all very important to take into context when we're making sense of and drawing conclusions.
When it comes to think about that in the context of human history, are you saying that we are living in a world where we're influenced by everything that's happened in the past?
No.
The highlights, the lowlights. What are you saying?
No, we today are not affected by things that happened hundreds of thousands of years ago. Not directly.
Other than us being here.
Grandma
and grandpa got it on that long ago. And we are here today.
Political and all of that. No, different world.
Yeah, it's different. There's echoes of it, but it's really the story we're telling ourselves.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be naive. There are things from the past that directly impact us today. We're celebrating the 250th anniversary of the United States. We're in the United States. Woo, woo, go USA. Okay. And still that Constitution is influencing us and who we are. And it looks different than saying, if we told ourselves the story that this event 200 years ago is having a direct impact on me, that story is actually having probably more of an impact than the event
did at the time.
Exactly right. Okay. Yeah. And certainly more than the event would if you weren't telling yourself that story.
Yeah.
So be conscious of how we are integrating human history into our own identity and our own story, and be aware of where is it helping me? Where is it maybe keeping me from having the life I want?
Yeah.
This episode of the Sex Life Science Podcast is sponsored by the Sex Test by Sex Life Science. The Sex Test is an anonymous, low-cost, fun, thorough, and entertaining tool designed to give people detailed information about their sexual likes and dislikes, their sexual values, and their expectations for their partner. When partners share their results with one another, they are shown a list of each of their sexual preferences. In other words, they have a bedroom cheat sheet they can use to try to enhance their sex life together. To learn more about the sex test, visit www.sexlifescience.com. What do we do with, let's face it, a relationship history that has its problems? You're in this relationship with your partner. We could even expand it to family members, friends. What do we do with a messy, an accurate, messy relationship history if we want to be able to tell ourselves a different story about the present and the future?
I think it's like what we've talked about before with personal narratives is we can see how these parts of our lives have impacted who we are and how we define ourselves. But we also have the opportunity to change those stories too. In the same way, we can do this in our relationships. We do have those problematic parts of our history. And I'm not suggesting we gloss over them, ignore them, but acknowledge them and also acknowledge the truth of our relationship currently. What is happening right now? Yes, the past is a contributing factor, but also I have the opportunity to make a different decision, to make a new story, to start writing a new history of where this relationship can go.
I love that you're recognizing the past doesn't have to be the present.
Mm-hmm.
Things change. My son and I are dorks. He's a little dork. I'm a big dork. We like maps. We like geography. Maps change. Borders change. Even something like national identity changes or goes from non-existent to existent. You think about ancient Greece, 700, 750 BC. You saw yourself as Spartan, Athenian, Mycenaean. They had city-states. They didn't have this thing like Greek identity. These were enemy city-states. They were competing in the way that countries have in more modern times. And it wasn't until later that all of a sudden you started to have this like Greek identity. So even something like that can change with time. So if you have a problem-saturated past in your relationship, first beginning by saying it doesn't always have to be that way.
On a lighter note as well, thinking about relationship past versus where it can be in the present, it reminds me of my own relationship. My husband and I met when we were 22.
Yeah.
So
young adults.
The way that our relationship looked at 22 looks very different now. So even those types of things of not sitting in a saturated narrative of what the patterns of interaction may have looked like when we were young. And
I think about that. I remember when I got to the age when I knew my wife when we met would so not be interested in dating me, just from like an age difference. I met my wife when she was 21 years old. I'm 43. There's no way 21-year-old Michelle would have had any interest in dating 43-year-old Justin. Just from an age, I mean, most 21-year-olds don't want to date somebody 22 years older. You're not even the same person you were at the start of the relationship, and neither was your partner, is what I'm hearing you saying, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. The things that you work through. I mean, we were very young adults. Yeah. I'm not going to say like kids.
No, you weren't. No. You're young adults.
Yeah, young adults, but had a lot to learn. Both had come from very toxic previous relationships. We had a lot to work through together. And we had the opportunity to assign the meaning. This is deepening our intimacy, deepening our connection, and it essentially built the rock of foundation that our marriage is on now. But we definitely did not start there. And if I were still reflecting on what our relationship was like when we first started out as very young adults, those type of narratives would not be accurate, nor helpful, nor conducive to the connection that we have now.
And what I see is when a couple starts to focus only on the problems, then that defines the entire relationship.
It even paints how they look at history.
Absolutely. We go back and we talk about, oh, well, these problems were there from the start. I can see them.
Yeah.
And focusing on the problem only means that all my experience in this relationship is that it's defined by this problem. Yeah. And I only start to see the relationship as problematic. Whereas part of what we can do is look for those exceptions.
It's very easy when a relationship isn't that satisfying to give yourself a historical account of your partner and the relationship that is overwhelmingly negative. There's a phenomenon called negative sentiment override, negative emotional override in relationship. They might be pointing to accurate events that occurred, but what they are not paying attention to are the positive things that happen, the positive characteristics, the positive moments, the loving, caring, kind, joyous things that need to be overwhelmingly outnumbering the negative. So you may have even had that initially. Like I will commonly ask couples, tell me how you got together. Mm-hmm. And they start to have this like nice conversation about how they started out. Like we were just sitting next to each other in class in college and we were part of the same homework group. And you know, we started to study together and next thing we knew we were boyfriends. And they start to say this nice little story and you hear about the date they went to and they saw Dave Matthews Band in 1998 and it was a great concert. And it's a fun story that they might not have even thought of in years by the time they're coming to talk to me in the therapy room. Challenge yourself. What are the highlights of this relationship history? Not just what are the low lights. Challenge yourself to remember both and to think about both.
It reminds me of the red car theory, where when you drove to work today and I were to ask you right now, how many red cars did you see? I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. But if I ask you to, count how many red cars you see on your drive home.
15.
You're going to notice the red cars. So same thing, if you're living in this problem-saturated narrative, you're going to be looking for the problems, and that's going to skew the way that you're perceiving your relationship, and it's going to overgeneralize, and you're going to miss those positives.
Yeah, it's called psychological priming.
Yeah.
If you prime yourself to notice a certain thing, you have a greater likelihood of noticing that certain thing. That could be a red car. That could be a number. When people talk about a lucky number, they're saying things like, I see it everywhere. I'm like, that's because you're primed to see that number everywhere. I guarantee every book you've ever read has a page 21. Okay. It just does. Okay. Unless it's a children's book and it's very short, 21 is on every book. Mm-hmm. You're primed. And what you're saying is you could prime yourself to notice the positive things your partner is doing. Mm-hmm. It's almost like rediscovering your partner. Another way I'll put that is like partner-centered fantasy. And I don't mean that just sexually. It's you're allowing yourself to play your partner's highlights in your head. Mm-hmm. And you are thinking about them in positive ways exclusively. It's a partner-centered fantasy moment. Not that it's fictitious, but you are just taking a moment throughout your day. I could easily say partner-centered daydream. Right? Mm-hmm. Where you are just really thinking positively about your partner, and watch what that does to how you feel about them, how you interact with them. Love that.
I also try to use this with couples who haven't had quite a problematic history, but one who's having problems right now, and being able to talk about the truth is in this moment, it's really hard. Mm-hmm. The angers flare, the upset at each other. You're really going at it for whatever reason. Taking a moment to say, okay, there is the truth of this moment. I'm really hurt by this person right now. And at the same time, there's the larger truth of the relationship. And that truth of the relationship can inform me on how I can respond to this person. That I don't have to take this momentary anger or flared feelings or pain and blow it up too big and respond in a hurtful way. But I can remember the whole history of our relationship that has led us to, I actually do like this person and I want to work through it.
And that is where a knowledge of family history and then human history can also help. You don't have to read about many relationships or understand about many relationships in your family before you learn there are relationships that go through tough times. And a large percentage of them make it through on the other side stronger. It's a refiner's fire moment. They had to learn new skills. They had to empathize with one another. They had to really humble themselves and ask themselves, okay, who am I? Strengths and growth areas. I need to focus on my partner. And what do I have to learn here in this situation? A lot of couples that are celebrating their very happy 50th or 60th wedding anniversary will say, and I remember years 12 and 13 were rough. We both lost our parents. We were both going through a lot of grief. And we had some issues. The kids were young. Those were like, I didn't know if we were going to make it. And we're talking about a very happily married 50 and 60 year. They made it through. So taking some inspiration from history, if not yours, maybe this is the first time you've had a rough patch in your relationship. Know that you are sailing seas that have been traversed well by others.
And part of what I see when I'm working with couples is a turning point usually happens where they start to incorporate those kind views or those positive biases towards their partner. They start noticing the exceptions. The narrative has been problem. And suddenly they start seeing, oh, but they also did this and it was really great. And they took care of me this way. And once we start including those as part of the story, that's usually where a turning point. I'm not saying it's done. I'm not saying it's over.
And it's
I'm
going
not
to take
saying
work.
the seas are clear, but you can tell that that sparks hope.
Yeah, what you're pointing out is that relationships can evolve.
Yes.
I think about this when you look at sibling relationships, how they could look one way when you're a child, especially if there is, for the time, a significant age difference. So let's say you have siblings who are 5 to 7 years apart from one another. Well, when you're 43 and your sibling is 48, that doesn't feel like that big of an age difference. But when you're 5 and your sibling's 10 and you're 10 and they're 15, developmentally, those are different galaxies. And you will commonly have people like, it's a parentified child dynamic, or you were so bossy, or you were so annoying. And all of a sudden you see how these relationships evolve from maybe high conflict to they're like best buds now. That's that relationship evolution process.
Yes.
Your relationship history doesn't have to be your present. Your present will be informed by your relationship history. Sometimes it's I'm glad we're not there anymore. Look what we've learned since then.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's important to remember right now, I'm in the midst.
Yeah.
There will be history that comes after now.
You're writing history right now.
Absolutely. We are participating in telling this story right now. And I don't know the ending yet, but I'm right in the midst. And so many people have come before, as you talked about. I look back and I was in the midst, but I know the end. Right now, I don't know the end. And that's scary. And that's concerning. But there's also hope in it because maybe the end is really good. And so remembering right now, I am in the midst of writing this history. What history can we write together? Couple, families, parents, all those things.
I think one more thing I want to point out here is that parents can play a direct role in modeling for kids how to talk about history. Our memory is a reconstruction rather than a recording. Parents, in talking about family history and sharing stories, you mentioned earlier a story about you having a conversation with your grandfather when you were 5 that you don't remember. Your parents have played a major role in telling you that story so many times that it's now a major part of your narrative.
Yes.
Even though you don't have the memory of that. And you were there. You're the one who did it, you little 5-year-old therapist.
I was the protagonist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're the hero of that story and you don't remember it. Parents encourage a certain narrative in their family. Just from a memory standpoint, even just good parenting habits like getting your kids sleep, that is the time that we think the consolidation process happens. Consolidation, you can listen to the memory episode of the podcast. We have these short-term memories. And when they are consolidated into long-term memory, we think that happens during sleep. So even just making sure your kids have enough sleep, that paired with obviously a healthy diet and conversations where you are modeling a connection to history and writing adaptive narrative, that's powerful. Your kids are going to learn that. I saw a video years ago of this little girl. She was crying and her mom's talking to her. And I don't know if she had done something wrong or had a momentary failure in something. And the mom said, "Who are you?" She's like, "I am worthy. I am strong. I am resilient." And you know she has heard her mother tell her these truths. And that's part of her history. That's her story. And she was going to pick herself up. And I can't remember the context, but it was like tear jerking. And I had a lump in my throat. I'm just like, that's such a good mom and sweet little daughter. That is an example of what we're talking about here.
And having those repeated moments is a way of emphasizing those values, those things we care about so much. I tell my kids every time I send them to school, do good anytime you get a chance. Be brave. Kindness is always more brave than cruelty. And know that you're loved always. And the idea is that each time I say it, I'm emphasizing it again, so that when they tell that story, this is an emphasis on what their story is.
And they might be sharing that story with their kids or their grandkids as an example of family history.
Yeah.
And you're seeing that cycle through the generations. Today's episode of the Sex Life Science Podcast is brought to you by the Briggs Institute Incorporated. The Institute is an individual, couple, and family therapy private practice in Nashville, Tennessee. For more information, visit the Institute's website at www.thebriggsinstitute.com. What do you want people to remember about today's episode?
I want people to think about my driving analogy, where you got to have your hands on the wheel, be present, looking forward, and treat the history as your rear view mirror. It's important to glance at and make sense of, but if we stare at the past for too long, we're going to crash the car. To keep looking forward.
Love that. Yeah, there is a Goldilocks zone. There's thinking about the past too much, too little. We're advocating for the super specific just right.
Just right.
Yeah. Love that. I think I want people to remember that relationship past is not necessarily relationship present. When you have two people who are willing to make changes in relationship, you have reason to hope that the relationship can grow and evolve. Whether that be a romantic relationship with a family member, friend, colleague, coworker, enemy, relationships can evolve. They will evolve, and they could get better if you have willing parties ready to make changes.
I want people to remember that history, while it is important to remember accurately, there's also that meaning part that's so important. And if there are parts of your story that the meaning, you're not even sure why that meaning is so big for you and why it is leading to some of the behaviors or thoughts that are causing harm in your life, there is a way of redeeming or recapturing that memory and telling your story that includes the accuracy of it, but allows you freedom to make different choices, to become a newer person that doesn't have to be caused by that moment that has happened, but you can be a resilient person as you move forward.
You're talking about the difference between a redemption story and a victim narrative.
Yes. And if you need help with that, then please come see a therapist. That's what we wanted to work with you about.
I know what side we're going to advocate for there.
Yes.
Yeah, we're big on redemption stories.
Victims, we get more clients.
Yeah. That's the pop critique. They're like, oh, but your patients get better and you don't have any money. I'm like, I tell my clients all the time, I will replace you on my caseload like that. We don't have a job if our clients don't tend to get better. So absolutely, come talk to a therapist. If you are struggling to make sense of your history and asking yourself, how do I make a truthful, honest, accurate meaning out of this that is helpful? That's our sweet spot. We're going to help you understand what that might look like for you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
I love doing the podcast. I love these conversations. They mean so much. Thanks for being on here.
It's a blast.
I love participating in them.
Yeah, keep doing it. Those casting calls, anytime. You guys are welcome.